When we began our preparations for this symposium several months ago, the last thing that we had on our minds was a global pandemic that would infect millions of people across the world and cause massive loss of life. We did not, as we arranged this symposium, expect such an extensive and all-encompassing disruption of global financial markets, production, and trade and commerce. We certainly did not expect that our economy would shut down and close down completely for such an extended period. We didn't expect that companies would close and that thousands of jobs would be threatened. And we did not expect that public finances would be so severely damaged. The coronavirus pandemic has triggered what is likely to be the deepest global recession in the post-World War II era, possibly as deep as the Great Depression in the 30s. Global economic prospects are highly uncertain, with unknowns about both the cause of the disease and the economic impact. We are now in an era and a period of great uncertainties. Our country has not been spared from this economic devastation. Disruptions that are caused by COVID-19 globally and locally have exacerbated South Africa's economic vulnerabilities, but they've also dimmed our economy's growth prospects. Growth is likely to fall by at least 7%, if not more, compared to an expectation of modest growth of around 1% that we expected before the pandemic struck. A long period of recovery can be expected, even when interventions that we take to stem the transmission of the virus, and even as we relax those. Now that South Africa's sovereign credit rating has been downgraded to sub-investment by all three major credit rating agencies, it will be more expensive for the country to raise money on the international markets. However, a deep domestic financial sector has helped to cushion some of these international capital flows, and the efforts to safeguard the stability of the domestic financial sector has been at the forefront of the response to the current crisis. A combination of policy measures that we have embarked on has ensured that the government continues to be able to fund itself through the domestic bond market at reasonable costs, stabilizing yields, the injection of liquidity, reducing market volatility, and alleviating disruptions to the flow of credit to the real sector. The result is that South Africa's financial system has remained relatively resilient despite the ongoing crisis. Yet the severe damage caused by this pandemic and the damage it continues to cause has not diminished our determination to drive what I would call an ambitious and sustainable infrastructure development program, which is precisely what we are all about here today. To the contrary, the coronavirus pandemic has made infrastructure investment even more compelling, even more important, and in the case of our country, even more urgent. That is why we have placed infrastructure at the center, at the heart of the stimulus our country needs to achieve sustainable recovery. Even before the pandemic, South Africa's investment in infrastructure had been declining for several years, which, among other things, had caused great hardship for the construction and related industries. But now, coronavirus has had a particularly severe impact on infrastructure service providers, both for projects under development and under implementation. As a result of the lockdown, these service providers have seen a drop in demand and revenue. Buyers of infrastructure services have delayed procurement of new projects, and they've even cancelled projects. Lenders and investors, in turn, are revisiting their decisions to invest in infrastructure projects that were deemed bankable prior to the pandemic. The cost of some inputs has increased, while some inputs are at least temporarily not available due to disruptions in national, regional, and global supply chains. Lower revenues, higher costs, and non-payment has resulted in layoffs of workers, financial losses, and also cash shortages. This requires that we not only push ahead to revive infrastructure investment, but that we rapidly move to increase the scale of our activities, our interventions, and indeed our ambitions. This crisis provides even greater impetus for the implementation of the key reforms that are necessary to transform the economy to support inclusive growth. The Minister of Finance has put forward a package of reforms that are needed to address macroeconomic imbalances and boost long-run growth as the crisis eases to lower borrowing costs and provide additional space for infrastructure investment to occur. The recovery package is intended to contribute to the speed at which South Africa can emerge from this crisis and improve the capacity of the economy to deliver sustainable, inclusive growth. Globally, both advanced and developing economies are looking to infrastructure as one of the key sectors that they want to utilize to stimulate economic recovery efforts from the impact of COVID-19. We are in that field as well. Infrastructure investment provides both short and long-term economic benefits. In the short term, it creates jobs which are much needed in our country, but it also provides economic activity as roads, bridges, hospitals, schools, power plants, and much else are built. It gets construction and related services companies back to work, inducing them to hire staff and to expand capacity. As construction services are procured, government can assess project proposals on the employment impact to ensure the job creation impact is maximized. Shovel-ready projects that have been fully developed for implementation will be the priority, ensuring that ground is broken as soon as possible, and that we go beyond what Minister De Lille said, go beyond talking about projects and go towards breaking ground and getting the projects underway. Infrastructure investment is also an important signal to the economy that investment and expansion is happening, which will improve consumer and business confidence, leading to increased economic activity. It is for this reason I keep saying that infrastructure, in the end, is the flywheel through which we want to generate economic activity. In the long run, infrastructure investment increases the capacity of the economy, reducing the cost of transport and the capacity and reliability of key services like electricity and municipal services. This enables more efficient supply chains. It will lead to increased productivity and will drive sustainable economic growth and a faster pace of job creation. Government should also invest in infrastructure itself to enable businesses to accelerate employment and grow the economy, which will also allow government finances to stabilize and recover. Infrastructure investment should present good value for money to the taxpayer and be delivered on time and provide quality services to the public. Now, government is looking at policies that facilitate economic recovery, such as introducing stimulus packages that boost government's infrastructure spending, creating financing instruments that provide liquidity, bridge financing or debt restructuring instruments, as well as guarantee products and funds. Development finance institutions are expected to support the creation of these instruments. We will further encourage proposals from private developers for sustainable and resilient infrastructure projects, offering a clear and expedited path for their approval. We will also seek to prioritize proposals for infrastructure sectors that are important to economic recovery and resilience, including sectors such as energy, transportation, healthcare, and indeed the ICT sector. The SIDS promise a process through which the prioritized key network industries for investment will be able to be upscaled. These sectors have proven to have superior multiplier effects. They have these multiplier effects because they introduce greater efficiencies in the economy. They promote spatial justice and have capacity to absorb skills. We decided to also include agriculture due to its employment absorption capacity, but also due to the important role that it plays in the economy. The upstream agriculture processing opportunities offer possibilities for revitalization of rural economies. Integrated human settlements is another area of focus in the SIDS process. Many people in our country are in great need of housing. The demand is huge and the supply is quite on the downside. And it is for that reason that this has also been identified as a key area. Our promise of providing decent housing to low-income communities is not complete. We are fashioning a number of innovative building technologies and financing instruments to allow the private sector to participate in the low-income housing market. In the course of implementing the projects, we will pursue ambitious transformation targets that will help to remake ownership and production patterns by allowing for meaningful participation of designated groups in the entire value chain of the project life cycle. We will use this program to support Black infrastructure service providers in much the same way as we have supported the emergence of Black industrialists. This is an industry which needs to be transformed, as Minister Delil said. It needs to be transformed with regard to the ownership of the various players in the industry. It needs to be transformed in relation to participation, the capabilities and the skills layout in the industry. South Africa has enormous capacity for infrastructure development. Our task is to blend the skills and the experience of seasoned and even retired professionals with new generation who have the qualifications but would benefit greatly from mentoring and support. We are also determined to root out the corruption and the collusion that has plagued and dogged this sector over many years. This is a period of transformation. This must be seen as an opportunity to build and maintain infrastructure in a different way from the past, in a much more transparent and efficient manner, and with greater accountability. The process leading to this symposium has been quite revealing in many ways. The public and private sectors have collaborated in producing a credible and robust project pipeline. Clear policies and institutional frameworks and bankable investment opportunities are critical to incentivize private sector investors. Domestic business investors' sentiment is a key first mover that will help to crowd in other investors, particularly our foreign investors and portfolio investors. Therefore, we are listening to our domestic private sector needs and requests to deal with backlogs to greater investment. In addition to financing, the private sector has an important role to play as builders and operators of public infrastructure. Now, these functions can add considerable value to the public if the right procurement and contracting processes are followed to ensure low prices and appropriate allocation of risks. As we work at strengthening this newfound relationship with the private sector, and I may add, a very beneficial relationship with the private sector, government will work towards addressing investment policy uncertainties, as we are doing. We will accelerate state-owned enterprise reforms and formulating necessary infrastructure policy reforms. Particular attention will also be given to enhancing the state's capacity and skills improvement. We have said in the past that the state's capacity is challenged, but this COVID-19 moment is giving us a much greater opportunity to enhance state capacity. We are reconfiguring the public sector infrastructure ecosystem to allow for a seamless consideration and packaging of projects. The creation of a consistent and predictable project assessment methodology across all government and the establishment of a single window of entry for project preparation and packaging is key to our success. Working with the private sector, we will invest in the creation of both the technical and financial engineering capacity in the state. The SIDS process has convinced us that this is possible. And through the process that we've been involved in, which has been led by Dr. Ramaphosa, we have seen on the horizon that greater capability and efficiency can be achieved through implementing this methodology. The submission and evaluation of 276 projects over a period of 5 months with significant project preparation success confirms that with more time and additional effort and greater focus on projects can be taken to financial close. We are institutionalizing the SIDS methodology as a new way of packaging as well as of preparing projects for funding. This methodology will determine 3 pathways for project funding: the commercial funding, the blended financing, as well as the fiscal allocation, which is where the state comes in. Let me thank the multilateral development banks, the development finance institutions, the commercial banks of our country, organized business and infrastructure-oriented organized bodies for contributing resources to the success of the SIDS. This is where the cooperation between the private sector, development finance institutions, and government has worked to greater perfection. And we look forward to an enduring relationship that will propel our economic recovery effort. This symposium is laying a path for South Africa after coronavirus, but also well into the future. In many ways, it represents a new beginning for infrastructure development, a new beginning that promises inclusive growth, development, transformation, and above all, hope for a better tomorrow for all our people. Now, this intervention may seem unique for South Africa only, but it is an intervention that is also relevant for our continent. South Africa, within the African Union family, has been given the responsibility of championing infrastructure development. And it is through a process such as this also that we will be able to ensure that infrastructure development across our continent is also propelled. It is through these types of efforts that we will be able to attain the objectives and the aspirations that we have set out for the African Union in Agenda 2063. I wish to thank you for your participation. This, as Dr. Ramaphosa said, is truly a historic moment for South Africa, for our continent, and indeed in the world. This is the first time this type of conference or symposium has been held, particularly during the period of and the era of COVID-19. So I thank you for your participation and look forward to the inputs that are going to be made as we hear views, thoughts, but more importantly, as we hear even more commitments of funding to the projects that we already have. Remember, we have 276 projects. Some have already been committed to funding. I need more money for the other projects. Thank you very much. Thank you.
For more, go to ewn.co.za.